What makes 3D Internet 3D Internet? So I'm going to move to a simple scene here, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about action zones. In this particular case, what I have is I've created 3 different boxes, and what I've done is the boxes actually work at different levels. When you create a building, for example, I by default give you 3 different what we call load zones. And this is a demo just to show you about where those load zones happen. Now, the first one, the blue box, is going to be my extreme load zone. That's an object that's set to load in that particular load zone. In fact, if I right-click it, what I have is under Show Advanced, I have Extreme Load Zone for Shape Visibility Distance. Okay, so that's what I'm going to see when I'm the farthest away to go, oh, there's something over there. I need to walk over there and see what it is. And it can be as many meshes and objects and molds as you want it to be. It can be as many items as you need it to be. It could be one Blender object. It can be 200 shapes. Whatever it is, you just set it to the extreme zone for each one of them, and they'll show up when this happens. For now, I just simplified it by showing you just one, just so we can see them in action. Okay, the next box, number 2 here, and looking under the, oops, scroll too far. Okay, we have high load when far. So this would be, for example, the outside of the building and also maybe the window, some window shopping type items or something. But this is the stuff you're going to see when you're getting closer. And it's going to be more detail for the outside of the building. That's technically what it was designed for. And finally, the last one, this is going to be the items that are inside your building. Now, you should know, you can create custom load zones. So like if I go down this hallway, now these items show. Or if I walk in this room, then these items show. And they don't show until I go in that area. They can be just outside the door of a room. So when you walk outside that door, before you go through the door, it loads up everything that's in that room. All of a sudden you walk in, everything's already loaded. So there's some techniques I'll show you, and there's some real cool tricks of the trade that I'll get you through. But for now, I just want you to know that this is the core that makes 3D browsing possible. And with my quick, document Brown impression, let's see if I can do this. Let me think, what am I going to say? This sucker's electrical, but it takes a 1.21 gigawatts of electricity to 3D browse. No, just kidding. Okay, back to reality here. Wife's laughing at me. I don't blame her. Okay, so I'll practice that one. I'll come back another time and see if I can't do it even funnier. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Okay, so what I have is 3 different items, 3 different load zones, and I'm going to just default off that box. Now notice when I walk backwards, first thing is right about, let's say, where's it going to happen? And now let me reload the scene because I was editing it and changed it. I just want to make sure it's going to load and do everything we want it to here. I didn't change the load zone, but sometimes when I save it, it doesn't catch right. So, okay, I'm walking backwards, and there it goes. So we lost the first one at this distance. Then the next one is the high zone, and notice and these can be adjusted too. Notice it disappears at that distance, so that's when we start to get more detail on our building. And finally, the extreme zone. I want this to be pretty far, and this is just going to be the default. And as you build buildings, this is actually dynamic, so it actually grows as it needs to. But notice it just disappeared. So to demo this, on my bottom left in my quick editor settings, there's actually a zones on or off button. And if you turn them on, the first thing you're going to see is there is a cube here. Notice we can't see the top of it because it's really, really, really tall. If I back up far enough, you'd be able to see it. But this is that extreme zone box, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn back this way a little bit, and I'm going to walk inside of this box. When my avatar crosses that area, notice, well, there it is. Now it loaded. It went out on the internet, got the information it needed from this extreme zone, brought back, and then displayed it on the scene. So now we're in that area, and it shows. And notice if I walk back out of the box, it completely erases it from memory. So going back forward, and we have that box, and I'm going to keep walking in this direction. And oh, another thing, notice I don't see another box in front of me for the load zone, even though we know there's 2 more load zones. The reason is when you click this zones button currently, it's designed to only show you the load zones that are loaded. Each load zone themselves can be triggered by a different load zone. So when I was in the outside the extreme area, I wasn't loading these internal load zones that are when you're closer. I'm only loading the one object. I'm trying to minimize how much I load at any one time. So once I walked through it, it not only loaded the blue box and the ground, the foundation for the building, but it also loaded the next zone that I need to hit to load the additional objects. So now as I walk farther forward, notice I walk inside this one and there's our red. And finally, I can refresh that one more time and notice there's our close zone for when we're near the building. And I'm going to walk up on this one, and as soon as I walk through it, now the white box opens. So that is load zones. Those are triggering, setting off, going out on the internet, grabbing information, bringing it back, and telling it to load that particular object when you're doing it. Okay, so by doing that, it distributes what we load at any one time. It makes it where we're not loading any more detail than we need until we get close enough to use it. Okay, so with that said, let me show you that in action on an object that I'm going to load up just a building. And this is from our homepage currently. This is the demo of how these load zone worked. So at a distance, we are already in the extreme load zone, okay? And as I walk forward, notice I just triggered another load zone because more objects went. That's my default distance, where I'm at a high distance. And as I'm walking even closer, I trigger when I want the doors and windows to appear on the building. Those are the 3 different load zones. Now in this particular case, I may have broken it out into more load zones because if you have to load too much stuff at any one time, you could actually break the animation where it has to pause for a second and move. It has to balance out and do different things at different times. So if you stagger when it loads a certain amount of information, then it kind of breaks it down and does it over an area. Now to help you, I also do the same thing. When you tell it to load something, I put it in a queue and then I load it friendly so it doesn't load too many at any one time. So I'm doing a lot of that work for you, but you can also do that. For example, notice on these outside edges, there's a block of, foundation, but there's nothing really on it. But yet, if I walk over here, now there's a railing. I've added additional load zones that were custom that only work if you're in that area of that edge. See, and another thing to notice, I'm going to walk on this side. I know I'm going towards this side of the building, so those loaded. But if you'll notice, actually I did load both. I'm standing inside of one. The dimensions of the thing caught the other one, and the other side is loading right here. You can see it. But there are times when you can have it where only one of them load, depending on where you're standing. Like only on this side loads, for example. Okay, so that shows you that. Now let me back off to where we first started in the scene again, and I'm going to do that same thing, but I'm going to show you the load zones so you can see them as we're doing it. First things first. Okay, we're going to turn on the load zones, and notice we're already in the extreme load zone. That's why something loaded. But I'm going, hey, what's that over there? Now I walk in front of the high load zone, and there's the next piece. And when it did that, it also loaded, notice the number of load zones. There's one down here that goes outside here. There's another one that's really tall. Those are my default ones. I tend to make them tall to make sure everything loads at some point in time. And then you can have certain ones that only work from certain areas. I went with tall because if you fly over in an airplane, for example, or if the gravity's off and you want to go over it, it should load. So that's why I did that. And as I'm walking forward, I have these other ones that extend off to the sides. So notice when I break this plane and I walk inside of this box, now you'll see the doors, the back area goes, and some plants show up in the front of the building. Now when I walk inside of this one, now the windows show up on the building that are shaded, and also the welcome sign shows up. And eventually, if I walk in front of one of these boxes, this is where it's triggering, doing the railings on the side. Okay, so the other thing, notice, is here's a load zone. Well, it's not. Here's an action zone. Notice it's in front of the doors. And let me trace it a little bit so you can see. There's this box right here. Now what this one is, instead of a load zone, it's still an action zone. They all cause action. They all trigger something to happen. But when I walk inside of this one, it's a different one. This one triggers the swinging open of the doors. And if I walk out of it, the doors close. So what I've done is I've created different ones that can do different things. So that one triggers the doors to move. Now when I come in here, notice if I look at the side doors, there's a box around them too. Those are the action zones that swing those doors open. And another little trivial thing, I put the action zone, I can size them any way I like. I made it where it's very shallow on the inside because I'm pushing the door open. So it doesn't really happen until I get really close to the door. And that's pretty much like I'm running into the door and just shoving it open as I go through. If I'm on the outside, notice that it extends quite a bit farther out. It's because the door has to swing all the way open before I cross that plane and get into it. So by setting them up properly that way, it works. The other thing I have in this room that I just want to point out is, notice we have a globe, and if you look closely, it's spinning. This pole is part of its action zone. Now, this particular one is a rotation area, but I'm not triggering it by being in an area. It just rotates all the time whenever this is drawn. So the globe will always be rotating. I didn't have to turn it off and on. Yep, and it works in all browsers. And okay, so notice the pole itself, the axis is spinning, and I told this globe, which is basically a sphere like we created in the last scene, and with an image of a world on it. So then I told it to spin with that pole. And I could have grabbed more objects and told them to spin also. It can be as many objects as you want to be with any axis that you create. Another thing I want to point out while I'm here, this is a good little demo area, is, okay, while I'm in here, two things. One of them is I can have images that when you move your mouse over them, they highlight. You can also have these little like alt tag type things that pop up, so you can say click for 3D browsing information. Okay, also follow WalkTheWeb on YouTube and follow us on Twitter. So we have the different buttons here. Notice they're even animated. They stick out a little bit farther as you click on them or as you highlight them. And if you click on them, yes, you do bring open the links on the page. This is the interaction that allows you to be 3D browsing as part of browsing. So we extend out and show different pages.
In the movie is
okay, we can also set if it shows up in an iframe or if it sets up as a different tab on your browser. Some pages like YouTube aren't designed to go inside of a tab, so I could create a web page that is and put my YouTube video on it or whatever. So there's ways to nest things, but there's different things that if you highlight over them or if you click them, we do have links. Okay, now to put it all together, there's one more thing I want to show you about this before I move on, and that is I'm going to show you Google Analytics on any one of these items. For example, oops, I don't want to select the building. I already have the building selected. I'm going to go into my options and settings and building information. I give you the option to set the building name and also a Google Analytics ID. So I've added this Google Analytics ID to this page. Now I may have to change that later on just because other people just saw what that was, but okay, we'll worry about that at that time. Or actually I'll change it after I get done today, but I do want to demo this to you, so it's important that I show you what I have there. Okay, so you put your Google Analytics ID there, and the reason I didn't bother hiding it is because when I show you this page, you're going to be able to see that ID anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. I'll change it. Okay, now when I bring open this web page, and I'm going to make it side by side so you can see what it's doing, and I'm going to load this from scratch. So I'm loading being able to walk up and see this building. And remember when I said we're starting in the extreme zone. So it's loaded the extreme zone, and notice I just got a hit, and I'm out here in Riverside, California at the moment, and that's showing me as an active user. And notice the page that it loaded is building-far.php. I'll make it friendlier on the paths, but that is saying which building it loaded, which community, and everything that it does. It shows the distance, it shows where it is, but it says it load building far. So then I'm going to show you where the zones are again, and I'm going to walk inside of this zone. And when it triggers, when I walk inside that, what's going to happen is, it takes a second, there it is, and now we have, it's still showing building far, there it is, the new click, and it updated, and now when I show you, it says building-near. So this is a way of you knowing if people saw your building from a distance, did you draw attention to it? Can you improve what it shows from a distance so that they are interested to look closer and see what it is? Then, did they walk closer, and did it actually show the building load at the next level? So we can set up these different custom levels where each one can be showing us on our Google Analytics, and we can tell how far or how much they saw before they walked away. That'll also give us statistics on how long they spent on the site, how long they were looking at our web page and stuff. We can do different things to help determine how their interaction went. Because notice, like if we were in a 3D store or something, if you walk inside there and I click on a product, I would see that you read the product information about a certain product. I would see that you clicked and added it to your cart. Every one of those become your page views for your particular building. So very friendly, helps pass it in, helps track it, and you'll know exactly what you have. Okay, so, and don't bother worrying about that Google Analytics ID. I used that one specifically for this demo. I used it for this building, which isn't going to be on our homepage in another couple days. So, with that said, now you have the Google Analytics. You can tell exactly what your website's doing. You can tell because of that, and partnered with your Google Analytics shown on your online store, you'll be able to see everything that's going on. You'll be able to see if they came from here, if they're looking at it through 3D, because you get the statistics